Hello everyone, so in this video we are going to solve a question on LeetCode, that is candy. This is 136th question on LeetCode and this comes under hard category. Alright, so let's start with the problem statement. There are n children standing in a line. Each child is assigned a rating value given in the integer array ratings. So basically we have given an array ratings. Alright, and you are giving candies to these children subject to the following requirements. So basically we have given two conditions. Okay, so these two conditions are first one that each child must have at least one candy. Okay, this is very important. Each child must have at least one candy. Okay, and the second condition is children with a higher rating get more candies than its neighbor. Okay, so basically what we need to check is the person or the child which is having the higher rating must be assigned more number of candy than its neighbor. Okay, so let's understand with an example. So let's say in the first example we have 1, 0 and 2. Okay, this is our first example. So in this first example, let's say we assign one candies as per the first statement. The first statement is each child must have at least one candy. So let's assign one candy to each child. So let's assign one candy, and now let's check the second condition. Okay, so in the second condition what we have, the higher rating gets the more candies. Okay, so let's say in this one is having greater rating than 0. So let's increment the number of candies here. Similarly, this 2 is having more number of candies than its neighbor 0. Let's increment this rating, this number of candy. Okay, so total we have 2 plus 1 plus 2, that is equal to 5. So total we have 5 number of candies, and this is the minimum number. Okay, since we just incremented one candy here. Okay, so this is the best possible answer, or we can say this is the minimum number of candies we can assign to each child. Okay, so this is the example. I hope the example is clear to you, and you know how can we assign the minimum number of candies. Let's see how can we approach this question. Okay, so to approach this question, let's see. So let's take the first example again, that is 1, 0 and 2. So in 1, 0 and 2 we have, let's say we assign one candy to each of the child again, and let's say we have an, this is our rating array. Okay, this is our given rating array, and let's say we make another array of number of candies here, and initially we assign one to all the child. Okay, and now what we can do is we can start checking. Let's say we have just completed the first condition. Okay, we have already assigned at least one candy to each child. Now let's satisfy the second condition. The second condition is higher rating gets more number of candies. So what we can do is we can check the neighbors here. Okay, so how can we check the neighbors? First we can check left neighbors, and in the second iteration we can check the right neighbors. So let's start with the first iteration. So let's say first iteration we do from left to right in this direction. Okay, and in this direction we basically check the left one. Okay, so what we are doing, we are checking the ith index with I minus 1th index. We are basically comparing both the index. Okay, if the ith index is having the greater number of candies, then, or we can say the ith number is having the greater number of rating, that is what mentioned here, higher rating gets the more candies. So if the ith index is having the greater number of rating or higher rating, then we need to increment the candies. Okay, let's see. So let's say we have, since we are starting from I minus 1, so it must, the first pointer will start from here, because if we start from this, then we do not have any I minus 1 here index, so we will be starting from the second one, that is 0th. So we will be starting from here, and let's check whether this 0 is greater than I minus 1 is or not, that is I minus 1 is 1. So it's not greater, let's move forward and this pointer will come here. Okay, now let's check for this. This is 2, so 2 is greater than 0. Okay, so when 2 is greater than 0, it means the rating is greater. Okay, the rating of 2 is greater than 0. So what we have to do, we have to increment the candies here. So how can we increment the candies? Since we need the minimum number, so the minimum possible value we can assign is the number of candies 0 is having. That is, let's say 0 is having x number of candies. Okay, and we want the minimum possible number of candies to be assigned to 2 such that it is greater than 0. So we can assign x plus 1 candies to 2. Okay, so let's say in this case 0 is having 1 candy. So we will assign 1 plus 1, that is 2 candies to 2. Okay, now we have completed the first iteration. Okay, now let's do the second iteration here. Earlier we were just iterating from left to right. Now let's iterate from right to left. Okay, now we are iterating in the right to left direction. Okay, so let's iterate. Now we are basically checking I and I plus 1th index. Okay, we are basically checking the right neighbor. Okay, so let's say we start from this point, because if we start from 2, we do not have any I plus 1th index, so we start from 0. Okay, so let's check whether this 0 is having the greater rating than 2 or not. It's not true, so we will just move forward to here. Now let's check 1 is having greater rating than 0. Okay, so if this is having greater rating than 0, then definitely we need to increment the candies. Okay, so we will just increment this with 1 plus 1, so that will be equal to 2. Now we have completed both the iteration. Okay, now we have just completed both the iteration, and we have got the updated array here. So updated array is 2, 1 and 2. So at the end we will just add all the number of candies. So this will come out to be 5. Okay, 2 plus 1 plus 2 is equal to 5. I hope the approach is clear to you. This is pretty easy question, I would say. And yeah, let's quickly code it up. If you still have a doubt in this question, feel free to comment it down. I will try to explain the approach again. Alright, so let's move to the coding part. Yeah, so we have, let's say we take int, and that will be storing the total number of elements, or we can say total number of children. So ratings dot size. Okay, and also let's make a vector of integer that will be storing number of candies here. So candies, and let's initialize all the values with 1. Alright, also check one more condition, that is the edge condition here, because let's say we are checking I minus 1 and I, and in the other case we are checking I and I plus 1. Okay, so for this condition there must be 2 element at least. Okay, that's why we are checking this. So what we can do is, let's say if, let me write here, if n is less than 2, then we will directly return 1 here. Okay, now let's run the for loop for left to right iteration. Okay, so let's write int I is equal to 1, since we were just checking from the next element, that is 0th element, 0 element. Okay, so I is equal to 1 and I should be less than n and I plus plus. Alright, now let's check if the rating of I is greater than rating of I minus 1. Okay, if it is greater, and also check one more condition, whether we need to increment the number of candies or not. If the number of candies are already greater, then we don't need to make any changes here. So if it is not greater, let's say if candies of I is less than equal to candies of I minus 1, then only we need to increment the number of candies. Okay, so let's increment candies I with candies I minus 1 plus 1. Okay, so this is our first iteration. So in this iteration we have just checked the left elements, or we can say left neighboring elements. Okay, so now let's check the right neighboring element in the next iteration, that we will do from rightmost side to leftmost side. So let's initialize int I is equal to n minus 2. Okay, and I should be greater than equal to 0, and I minus minus. Okay, since we are decrementing from right to left, okay, so this should be I minus minus. All right, now let's check if rating of I is greater than ratings of, this is ratings here. Yeah, so if ratings of I is greater than ratings of I minus 1, so in this case it will become I plus 1. Okay, since we are checking 0 and 2, that is I, this is I, and this is I plus 1. Okay, so we are basically checking I and I plus 1 here. Alright, so if this is true and whether the number of candies are less than equal to or not. If it is less than equal to the I plus 1th candy, then only we need to increment the count. Okay, so let's check if candies of I is less than equal to candies of I plus 1, then we will just increment candies of I with candies of I plus 1 plus 1. Alright, I guess this is fine now, and let's count the number of candies. So let's store this into the answer variable and let's run the for loop. So for int, let's directly run auto x and candies, just add answer plus equal to x, and at the end just return answer from it. Let's just run this. Yeah, it's working fine, so let's just submit this. Yeah, it's working fine, so let's calculate the time and space complexity of our solution. So the time complexity of our solution is big O of n. Okay, since we are iterating through all the n elements, so the time complexity is big O of n, and the space complexity is big O of n because we are storing the n elements into this candy vectors. Alright, so I hope the approach and solution is clear to you. If you still have any doubt in this question, feel free to comment it down. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. I will see you in the next video.